Did God use a star to guide people to Jesus if God discourages astrology? We're told that the wise men followed a star from the east until they found Jesus in a cradle. These wise men were called magi, and magi were astrologers. They were people who studied stars. Now, the thing about astrology is God actually discourages this for his people. In Deuteronomy, he says, beware unless you start worshipping the heavens by studying the stars. The reason God warns against astrology is because there's a deep temptation to start looking at the stars, looking at the things God created, and consider them your God. And that's what we see today, right? People looking at stars, at zodiac signs, and they think that that gives them meaning. That tells them who they are, and it also tells them what their future will hold. Instead of recognizing that God is our creator, we think what God created, the stars, the sun, the moon, is our God. It's out of order, and it will lead you astray. But why then would God choose such a sacred moment like the birth of Jesus Christ to bring people in by a star? And I think the answer is that God's salvation, Yeshua, Jesus, came for the very people that had their belief in the wrong thing. You see, God uses the lights that he placed in the sky, the lights that these people study, to show these wise men who the true light of the world is, Jesus. And it is the revelation that what I believed is a lie, what I believed isn't the full truth, that they come to know God. In fact, these non-believing magi, these non-believing wise men are the first to declare, this is the King of the Hebrews, before any believer Israelite priest. But how did they come to this revelation? Well, it turns out that God was cooking this revelation centuries before. You might know of a man called Daniel. Now, Daniel lived in a time where the Hebrews were taken captive and essentially made to work in Babylon. Now, the thing about Daniel is Daniel was super smart, and he was very hardworking. And so Daniel was placed as chief of the Magi in Babylon. The leader of Babylon said, you should lead my wise men. Daniel was never quiet about his faith. He always spoke about God. He always worshipped God, even when it almost cost him his life. And so Daniel used his enormous influence over these wise men to teach prophecies like in Numbers, when it says a star will rise out of Israel. Prophecies like in Genesis, when it says the scepter, i.e. the royal rod, will not pass from Judah. And so centuries later, when these wise men who were taught by the same institutions that Daniel had influence over saw that a star had risen above Israel, that would have been clue number one. They would have known this is part of the prophecy. And when these wise men followed this moving star until it camped over Bethlehem, Bethlehem being a town in Judah, ding, 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 that is clue number two. That is the second part of the prophecy. And therefore they put two and two together and said, this is the prophecy that we have learnt about. And that made them say, where is the king of Judah? Where is the king that we know is coming? They themselves looked at Jesus and said, this is the King of the Hebrews. And I think the point we're meant to see is that God doesn't wait for you to have perfect knowledge or have perfect theology to come and bring you into a relationship. He will take the little that you do know, even if it is wrong, and still use that.